everybody, and welcome to ToRAISE Questions, the Doula podcast. Hi, Thérèse.
Hey, Sarah. Hi, everyone.
I am Sarah Allen Short, and I'm here with Thérèse Hakoun, who's the executive director of ToLabor. And before we're going to talk about postpartum visits today, postnatal visits today. But before we get started, I just want to take care of a few things. Our website is ToLabor.com. Our Facebook is ToLabor Doulas. Our Twitter is ToLabor Doulas. Our email, if you have any questions for us on this podcast, is ToRAISEQuestions@gmail.com. You can send us questions. If you have a case study, hopefully you guys have heard some of the case studies we've done in the past. Those have been really popular episodes. We can actually go in and see how many people listen to every episode and sort of get a sense of what topics people like better than others through that. But we also would just love your anecdotal feedback on what do you like? What do you want to hear more of? If you have a case study, if you have a question, let us know. Email ToRAISEQuestions@gmail.com. Leave us a review on iTunes. That helps it show up. I have been really kind of amazed at how successful this podcast has been.
Oh, it's wonderful.
And if you would like to advertise, please let us know, because we really, really don't want, so we're being asked to do advertising. We have so many listeners. We're being asked to run advertising through the podcasting company.
Right.
And if we do that,
we have no control.
Right. We'll have no control. And so I'm trying to imagine a funny example of some horrible ad that I can use without offending anybody, and I can't.
Just use your imagination.
Use your imagination for the most inappropriate
to go along with our evidence-based practices.
Yes. We won't have any control over it. So we would love to have a sponsor. Our listeners are doulas, midwives, childbirth educators. We have a lot, thousands and thousands. We've had 100,000 downloads. We have many, many thousands, closing in on 10,000 listeners.
And from all over the country and actually
world.
Some from all over the world, yes.
Yeah. So if this is an audience that you'd like to reach, if you'd like to reach an audience of
you
doulas,
have a product
or service or anything like that, and you'd like to reach, let us know. We'll talk about maybe doing some advertising together. Because we have to pay for the editing, we have to pay for, there's a few costs associated with this podcast that ToLabor is now paying as the sponsor, and we would love some help defraying that. Okay, enough of that. Let's talk about anything else I forgot?
No.
Okay, let's talk about our topic. So we did a couple weeks ago, we did an episode on prenatal visits.
Yep.
I think what we're really trying to do here is balance out really practical topics with sort of more philosophical topics. And so we do a topic on, here, what do we call it? The wisdom of the elders on being present and trusting your gut. And then we balance that with, here's what to talk about at a prenatal visit. And today we'd like to do postpartum visits. So let's talk about the postpartum visit. Let's start. So I want this to be very practical, and I'm sure because it's us, it will go off tangent and it will be big picture. I think we're a good balance for each other, because I think you're big picture and I'm tangible, like practical, and together we sort of cover the bases. But let's talk first about when it happens.
Yeah, and that's something I think we've brought up at other times in these podcasts. My feeling, and I read the overwhelming majority of the certification packages that ToLabor gets. And we want to hear about your postpartum visit as well as, the services you've provided. And what I've come to realize is that it seems that all the doulas do a postpartum follow-up visit. The time frame varies, but what I've seen, I would say, is it's usually 2 to 4 weeks after.
2 to 4 weeks after. That surprises me a little bit.
And that bothers me a little bit more than a little bit.
So I would have said sooner.
Yeah, and I believe it really needs to be sooner. What I did as a birth assistant years ago on my own was just what I thought. Nobody was telling me, so it was just based on what I felt. Maybe it was based on me being a mother. My feeling was if they had birthed in the hospital and they were going to be in the hospital, I could check in with them while they're in the hospital but I tried to keep that to a minimum. I had them, at both partner and woman, be really clear on that they could call me at any time during that time. But I felt like they were going to be overwhelmed, you know, and there's always going to be extenuating circumstances if they've had a hard time with breastfeeding or family issues or health issues, or they are a single parent or something. You might want to be checking in more during that time. But generally speaking, my feeling was that what I put in my contract was that I would see them on the third day postpartum, meaning that if they birthed today on Wednesday, they would more than likely leave the hospital on Friday, and that I would see them therefore on Saturday at their house. And before I left the hospital, I would say, okay, so I'll be you guys check in with me. I can check in with you here as well, but I prefer it to be you calling me, not me disturbing you. But let's plan on me being there on Saturday. And how about Saturday afternoon? And we can say just right now, maybe around 2:00, but I'll check in with you guys on Friday evening to see how you're doing. I want to give them that time to get home, get settled in, and then
trust themselves a little bit.
Yeah. And then Saturday, that third day, which kind of might be the fourth day, her milk is either in or coming in. She's probably getting engorged. She's getting potentially more weepy. It's not uncommon at all that with the milk, the tears come. She's sleep deprived already, starting to be. The exhilaration is still there, the love, but it's not nearly what it was. And she's home, and they're home, and the reality is there. So I think it's a really important time to show up. People have said to me when I've responded back about this, or tried to communicate it with other doulas, they're like, well, they have family visiting, and they're, I feel like I'm needed later. It's too much of a distraction. I get that on a theoretical level, but the truth is you were the person that was there with them prenatally, through the labor, through the birth, and you are now part of that picture and that whole. And so I think that even if there's family members around, sometimes I wonder, Sarah, if I was just not a thinking person in the way people think nowadays. I just did. If there was family members there when I arrived at the house, I went.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't, and I made it clear. I wasn't focusing in back in those days on professionalism. I was being a professional without knowing that that's what I was doing. It was an assumption that I would show up, and maybe it was based on the midwife care that I had.
Well, that's what I was going to say.
As a mother myself.
If you have a midwife, the midwife is going to come 2 days after, whether you have family or not.
Right. And I know that the benefit of having that when you are at home, I don't care. And, in my circumstances, I didn't have a lot of family members around, so maybe that made me more sensitive to this issue. But even when there was my fourth baby, I still wanted that connection with that person who had been there. And my family members knew that was who I needed to spend time with, because I communicated that for one, but it was just a given. I would show up. So going back to, I feel like if it's possible that you should be there on that third, fourth day when they come home from the hospital.
Yeah. I shoot for fourth day because of all the stuff that you said. I think fourth day is often, especially with a first-time mom, the day the milk's coming in or is in. It's the day, as you said, and I don't know if a lot of people know this, but when the milk comes in, there's a hormonal crash that happens with your pregnancy hormones all leave all at once, and your nursing hormones all come in, and 80 to 90% of women have some degree of baby blues, and even if you've prepared them for it, it can be overwhelming for them and their partner, and they're the most happy thing has happened, and they're looking at their baby crying and going, I love you so much. Why am I crying? It's so for all of those reasons, that's when I go to. The only exception would be if they really don't want me. And that's happened rarely, where they say, we want more time alone, or it's very, very, very rare.
Yeah, I would think it would be rare. Of course it would be respected. Yeah.
And in, one or two situations, we've had some phone conversations, and I would say one or two of all the births I've ever done, they have never wanted one. And I'm only going to push so hard. And I know I've heard from other doulas before that happens sometimes, and they get very paranoid about what did I do wrong and why don't they want to see me? And it's worth asking yourself, but don't assume, because some people get very, very insular. It has also happened that if the birth doesn't go the way they want, they feel ashamed.
Which is another reason I think it's so important for that follow-up.
To go and let them know that you're not, they didn't let you down. But, they may, hopefully, in an ideal world, they can process all of that with you, but some people just don't want to do it that way. So,
and the other part of going is not even about the weepiness, it's the celebration of it. It's because you're bringing back in that birth energy, especially if they've birthed in the hospital and they've left that environment. When you birth at home, you're in your birth environment for as long as you choose to be in it, and you let people come into it or not. Whereas in the hospital, when I walk out of there, I'm taking a part of that birth experience with me. When they reconnect with me, I'm bringing a part of that back into their space. I'm, they're not going to see that room, those nurses, those people again. Their doctor, their midwife isn't calling them to check in with them and see how they're doing in the same way that you are. So I think it is important. And, Sarah, this is the old blah, 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 ToRAISE Hakun garbage talk now. That's so important. It's not garbage. I don't think texting in the postpartum is good either, because of what you were just bringing about, those shifts in those hormones and everything that's happening. How are you doing? Fine. Good. Not so good. Okay. I mean, how do we know what they mean by those words? I mean, please use the telephone to call them up. I mean, my rule of consideration is, and again, I learned this from my midwives. So this is where I think we model ourselves after that kind of care. It's the midwifery model of care. They not only came to see me, but they called me every day. When they weren't coming to see me, they called me every day, even if I didn't answer the phone. But I answered the phone because I wanted to talk to them. If it was an inconvenient time for me, I would call them back. And that's what I say to them. I'll leave a message and say, hey, I'm calling just to check in. If everything's going well, great, wonderful. If there's any questions, you have any needs that you want to discuss, any joys you want to talk about, give me a call back. I'm available. Remember, I'm still on call for you. And, most of the time when I would call, people would say, oh, I'm so glad you called.
Yeah.
Oh, I wanted to ask you. And I always would say, well, why didn't you call me? I told you should call me. Oh, I didn't want to bother you. So that's why it's so important that they be connected with. And I think that's that first week specifically. And then that second week, I think it can kind of taper to maybe every other day or so, but you're still checking in. I have come to understand then that I like to know if they have a partner and the partner is going to be home initially with them, like taking time off from work. I want to know specifically when they're going back to work. What is the first day that she's going to be there without
alone.
That support? I want to make sure I know that so I can check in on that day sometime during the middle of that day. How are you doing? How are things going? Because it can be, I don't care if it's your first child or your sixth, when you're suddenly left with, and especially when it's your sixth,
I was going to say,
left with all these children all by yourself, it can be overwhelming and scary. Like, oh my God, where did my support go? Or if they have family members that now are leaving. I want to know what day those family members are leaving, the mom, the sister, whoever was taking care, for that same reason, that they're now alone. Not that they're, I feel like they're vulnerable.
Yeah.
And I want to check in on that vulnerability. I also think it's a good idea, not required, but I think it's a good idea, especially in our culture, to make a note to call this person. If you're, some people continue to have lots of communication with their clients, and that's another topic.
We've actually talked about that a little bit, when it's too much and how to cut it off.
But I think if you are doing just kind of a package, you're being the professional and you're following a certain track with each client, check in at 1 month, check in at 2 months, and specifically check in at 3 months. Just a phone call. How are you doing? Thinking about you. I know it's been 3 months since the baby was born. How are things going? Just because we know that 3-month period of time, I feel as a mother, nobody taught me this. I had to learn it. Those first 3 months are intense. They are intense. The baby is getting to know the world, my breasts, everything. And I am in the exact same place. I'm getting to know this new baby, getting to know how they are and how life will transpire with them in my life.
Well, and all my clients always say, well, she's fine if I'm holding her, but I can't ever put her down. And this is, a shock to them. And it can be really nice just to be able to go, yeah, that's how most babies work, And people don't always have someone to tell them that stuff.
So we want to talk also about what to talk about at the postpartum visit.
Well, I was going to say another thing before we get to that, because that's on my list to talk about. I like to bring a gift, a small gift. And the reason is I think it's just a nice personal touch. And specifically, again, my midwife brought me a little gift that was very, very meaningful to me and very special to me. And I like to just have something that what I do is I bring a board book. That is like a sappy. I love my baby board book. I love my mommy and daddy board book, something like that. And then I imagine them reading it in a year or two and remembering the birth. And I say to, baby ToRAISE, love your doula, Sarah.
Oh, thank you, Sarah.
And I say your doula, Sarah. And it's just a little thing. And I imagine it being something that reminds them of the birth in the future.
I think that's nice.
I've heard other people give picture frames, meals. Some doulas bring meals. Some doulas knit hats or knit booties or something like that. And I know a lot of people will knit at some point during the birth or labor and then deliver that as the gift. What else have you heard for gifts?
Well, I used to make baby blankets. So I would bring a blanket, and I would always bring not a meal. I would bring a tray, a plate of like snack food for them so that they could keep it by their bed
while they're nursing.
I also think just a nice bouquet of flowers, a plant that they can have. I used to give a book called On the Day You Were Born.
That's one of the ones I give. Yeah.
And
that's what I mean by the sappy.
Right.
They make all those. That author, Nancy Tillman, has a bunch of other books too, and they're in board book form, which I like.
Okay. Yeah. Because we're talking a long time ago.
Inscribe them in Sharpie on a board book. It'll just a little tip there.
Nice. Nothing. If you don't feel compelled to do it, you know.
Yeah.
But it is a nice gesture because here's, I think, the reason behind it, and probably what drove you to do it also is they have given us such a great gift. I mean, this is a job and we did get paid to do it. But at the same time, what job allows you to see such an intimate, sacred experience happening between these people, and you're allowed to witness a facet of their life that, it really is an honor. And I think it's a nice thing to give back a gift in return.
Yeah. And you just build that into your business model. You know that your profit, it's like any other business, you know that you're going to spend a certain amount of money on business cards
and it can be
everything
specific to your client. It
Yes,
could be
yes.
it could be the oil that they were using at the birth, or something they told you that you knew that, like I've done gift certificates too, to either a restaurant, or back in the days I was really fortunate. The man I was married to had such great connections with restaurants, so I could get free meals for people.
I did once for a client that had gestational diabetes, and she bitched the entire pregnancy about how she couldn't have sugar, and she loves this lemon ice cream. I bought her a half gallon of lemon ice cream at the postpartum visit.
Yeah, see, it's listening
and it was
to
like
those,
$3, and she thought it was great. And anyway, we don't have to harp on that. So up to you. A gift is a nice idea. We are recommending sometime in the 3-4 day range. Maybe into 5. But sooner is better. So let's talk about what you cover. I will start us off by saying I always have an idea in my mind of what I want to cover, but I let them guide it. And I find that actually they want to talk about the birth less than I thought. When I was a newer doula, I always used to think like, oh, we're going to process the birth together. And because I do the visit, and sometimes they want to, and sometimes that'll be sort of peppered into our conversation. But I feel like a lot of the time they want to talk about the baby, and they want to talk about sleep, and they want to talk about, is this normal? And breastfeeding,
I think
and can you look at my latch?
Is this normal? Is this normal?
And so it's peppered through with, oh, remember that time I did this, or grabbed you too hard, or remember how the nurse did this, and oh, I was so proud of this, or oh, I really regret this. But I find actually that I just got an email the other day from someone who said, I had my baby a year ago, and you offered to talk about the birth whenever I was ready. And I'm ready now. Will you meet me for coffee and talk about the birth? And our financial arrangement is long, long over.
Right.
She, there's no financial gain in me meeting her for this birth, but she's ready to do it now. Right. And she needs to do it. She had a pretty
tough birth.
But again, I think I'm surprised, I guess, a little that more people don't want to just like revel in the birth and talk about it over and over. It's just the reality of the baby.
Well, that's
there.
What it is. So I think that going in, I think at the end, a nice way to wrap up the postpartum is, if there's time, because that's another thing we want to talk about, time. If there is time, just say, so what are your thoughts about the birth? Overall. And again, I talk about this at workshops. I think it's really important to ask the partner their perspective as well. I try and make sure that there is time for this. But I do agree, Sarah, I think what they're expecting, they're glad to see you because you're going to help them answer some questions.
Right.
And so tell me for the moment, and then I'll fill in blanks that I think. What you said, I come thinking there are things I want to cover. What are you specifically thinking are important? Because I think that would be good to share.
Okay, so breastfeeding is a big one. And this has happened to me maybe twice in my career as a doula, where I show up 4 days after and they are already supplementing, and I have had no idea this has happened. I don't know why. I don't know what went wrong. And I'm not saying it's my job to keep that from happening or to be involved in some way, but I feel like that's a failure of communication when that's a decision that's made and I don't even know about it, right?
And how would you prevent?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily prevent it, but I would do the same thing I do in birth.
But prevent not knowing.
Touching base when they're in the hospital, just giving them a call on day 2 and saying, how's it going? And when they go, oh, I don't have any milk, and the doctor says I need to supplement, you say, you remind them of what you've talked about, and you talk about, well, most women don't have any milk at 2 days postpartum, and what's going on that it's making the doctor worried, and you have those conversations.
Okay, so yeah, it's not that we're preventing the supplementation, it's preventing the lack of communication is what I meant.
It's actually a pet peeve of mine that people who are not experts about nursing think they are.
Yes.
And that if a woman tells you she has been diagnosed with low supply,
we shouldn't assume that's an incorrect diagnosis.
Exactly. Yes.
Yes.
That because there's certain things, it's like in birth, when someone, when a doctor tells your client there's low fluid, we all kind of roll our eyes and go, oh yeah, low fluid, right. that's what they always say. It's not a real thing. Well, sometimes it is a real thing, and you're not a doctor. It's not your job to diagnose it. It's your job to give your client questions and options and let them have the conversation about, and make that decision for themselves. And for me, it's the same thing with supplementing. I think this is super controversial. I mean, I don't know. I think that there is a lot of shame that goes along with our pro breastfeeding culture. I breastfed my babies. I am very pro breastfeeding, but I think there's a lot of shame that I think we shame women who don't. I think we often don't give women the support that they need. I think we think every woman is capable of breastfeeding, which may or may not be true, but also doesn't mean just because you can do it, you have to do it. If it's, I don't know. I've heard too many stories of women,
I hear what you're saying.
It's such a tough thing because I don't want anyone to mishear me. I support breastfeeding. Breast is best.
Well, I think
blah, blah, blah.
I think in this culture, it's hard to disagree that breastfeeding is probably the best option out there for the baby and the mother.
But, I had a client who had repeated thrush, she worked with every lactation consultant. She had repeated injuries to her nipple because of a latch problem. They looked into every, she was pumping blood into the bottle for 6 months because she said, if I don't breastfeed my baby, I'm a failure. And I just thought, no,
right.
No, when you are, when you're all of the milk that you're feeding your baby for 6 months is pink from your blood, this is a little far for me. It was her decision, but I just mean I don't ever want to be responsible for someone thinking it's
and
anyway.
And what you're bringing up, so I'm going to add into it, though it's an aside from our postpartum. That goes along with any conversations we've had in these podcasts and in workshops about suspending judgment. It's like when you're out and you see a woman, and I'm guilty of this. I see a woman with a bottle feeding her baby. And my assumption is she's feeding the baby formula. Well, because I believe in breastfeeding. Oh, shame on ToRAISE when she has that, that thought. And I've learned to be much more practiced at not jumping to that conclusion because, one, even if it's none of my business.
Right.
In the end, somebody would argue with me and say, well, it is because it affects our whole healthcare system, so forth and so on. And did she really know about her options and choices? Was she given support? All of those things. But put that aside for a second. Maybe it's breast milk that she's doing, and that's what she feels. She doesn't feel comfortable nursing in public, so she does this for her own sake and her baby's. Or maybe she still breastfeeds, but sometimes has to supplement as well because she doesn't have a good milk supply. Or maybe she really doesn't have a milk supply and she would love to do anything more. What she would love to do most is to be breastfeeding, and it pains her to be giving her baby a bottle, but she loves her baby and she wants her baby to live. So that's what she's doing. So all of those things.
She just doesn't want to nurse.
Well, that's what I mean.
And
maybe she has no reason to.
Right.
Exactly.
Maybe she just.
Exactly. And I said the aside to that would be just, blah, 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 blah.
Right. So
I
anyway,
agree with you. There can be shame.
Stuff is just an aside. So I want to make sure, I want to talk about nurse. I mean, usually by 3 or 4 days, if it's going to be difficult, it's difficult.
Right.
I have heard a lot of lactation consultants say there should never be any pain with breastfeeding if the latch is correct. I feel like my experience with a lot of clients is that some pain is pretty normal and resolvable even with a good latch. And my joke is always like, well, when's the last time you had someone on your nipple for 18 hours out of a day?
Yeah.
Like, how can that not take some adjustment? So we talk a lot about nursing. We talk about what's normal. We talk about, I also find that my clients get a lot of different advice from even lactation consultants in the same hospital.
Can I interrupt you?
Yes.
How do you feel comfortable, and where is your line in discussing breastfeeding, and when do you refer, and when do you, just use your...
I refer pretty easily because I have taken breastfeeding classes and I have personal experience with breastfeeding, but I'm not a lactation consultant or a lactation counselor. And so I guess it would be my judgment of what is a quote unquote normal breastfeeding issue. If they are having some pain, I will look at the latch. It's like if they're having pain and I look at the latch and the latch is bad, well, then I feel like that's why, and I can help them with a good latch. And, you know, I know what the latch is supposed to look like.
So an important factor for doulas listening, if you didn't already know this, is know what a good latch is.
Yeah. Well, I do feel like some basic breastfeeding support is part of a doula's job.
It absolutely
and you should know
is.
that. Mm-hmm. But if the latch is good and there's still pain, if there's blood, if there's any concerns about weight gain.
Yeah, or the baby only latches for very, very short times and they can't get that baby to nurse more frequently.
Yeah. I think all the same things we tell doulas during birth apply in postpartum. Mm-hmm. When I was a new doula, I would frequently have clients say, well, the doctor says I have to wake my baby up every 2 hours to feed them. And I would go, you don't need to do that. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. You don't need to wake a baby up every 2 hours to feed the baby. Well, then I learned, yeah, sometimes people have been given that advice for actual legitimate reasons. A lot of times they haven't. So what I would say instead now is, I wonder, what is your baby having weight gain issues? You know, was the baby born?
Don't assume that you know the answer.
Right. My assumption going into it is with a normal weight, healthy, full-term baby, there's really no need to do that unless there's some extenuating circumstance.
What we want to see usually is, and this would vary, of course, but generally speaking, after that first 24 hours when the baby doesn't need to nurse a lot, they may want to, but they may not want to. It is optimal, and most babies will do this on their own, that they nurse every 2 to 3 hours. And if it does, you know, if there's a period of time the baby's been sleeping 4 or 5 hours, it is a good idea to wake that baby up because you want the baby to get nourished, and then you also are building your milk supply for the long-term future, not just immediately. But so the 2 to 3, you know, wake them up is a good guideline for people to have, especially a first-time mom. But not by, oh my God, it's 2 o'clock, I got to wake the baby up, but more like the baby probably will wake up on their own.
I think my role, if everything is very much like in birth. Most babies are okay. Most postpartums are okay. And I want to teach you to trust yourself and your baby and not try to solve problems that aren't there. If there is a problem, and clients call me all the time to say, well, is it okay if I do this? Is it okay if I do this? Is it okay if I do this? And my answer is usually, is it working for you? Mm-hmm. You know, I get frustrated when I see people with no diagnosed problem, no indication of any problem.
And going to a lactation consultant?
No, not even that, but just more the whole regimen of like, they wake up, they pump because someone's told them they need to pump to build their milk supply. They've been told they have to feed their baby every 2 hours. So they're setting an alarm clock in the middle of the night to wake up every 2 hours to feed their baby. And, you know, they are counting the wet diapers. Right. And if they've been told they're supposed to be 4 on day 4 and they have 3 wet diapers on day 4, they're freaking out. Mm-hmm. I sort of feel like my role is just to tell them, hey, unless you have a reason to think it's not good, it's good.
Right.
With all the caveats about I'm not a medical professional and blah, blah, blah.
And saying, but if you have any concerns,
call your pediatrician.
Yeah, call your pediatrician or who was the lactation consultant, or I have the name, or the lactation counselor or educator.
Well, so I was starting to say this before. It is very common for my clients to get very different advice from different lactation consultants in the same hospital. It is very common for my clients to be told that they should not let the baby nurse more than half an hour on each side. And if they are, the baby's using them as a pacifier and it's inappropriate. Very common.
Isn't it? And here's what I want to say. What's wrong with the baby using you as a pacifier?
Well, it makes your nipples hurt and it makes you unable to get anything done and blah, blah, blah. And it's, you know.
Done at.
I know. At 3, 4, 5 days.
Is postpartum?
I know. So again, it's a delicate balance because what I will say is it is very normal for babies. As you said, it's very normal for babies to nurse every 2 or 3 hours. It's also normal for babies to just nurse kind of all the time.
All the time. Every hour. I mean, I think, Sarah, the most common thing to talk, I mean, the most important thing to talk about is this topic of breastfeeding, and it should begin in the prenatal period of time. And one thing I want to point out is know your clients' nipples. You don't even have to look at them, but know them. Are they inverted?
Yeah.
Are they, what do if she has inverted nipples, we want to know that.
Yeah.
Because we do want her to have guidance now. And then especially after the baby is born, you may not be that person. You are the person who refers her to a good lactation consultant or educator or La Leche League that can help her with those, specific issues. I think the breastfeeding, checking in, what you're talking about is really important, and going back to being reassuring without saying, oh, it's okay,
Right.
it's okay, don't worry about that. But I like your questions of, well, is it working? How's it going? And helping women also understand you can't schedule a baby. You might have to wake them up. If they are sleeping past 4 hours every time.
Every time. That's it. If they sleep
Then
4 hours once, praise God.
Yes, exactly. But if they are, it's not going to disturb your milk supply that much, or them. But if this is a consistent issue, then you do need to encourage them, and you do need to say, I don't think that this is a problem per se, but it might be something you might want to mention to your care provider, or, to the pediatrician, or check in with a lactation consultant and just be clear on anything else you might need to know about this. Because the truth is, sometimes it can be an indicator. A sleepy baby that you can't get to nurse can be a baby who's jaundiced and went undiagnosed at this point, or has other health issues. It could be late onset infection. And I'm not going to scare somebody, but I want them, I'm not in charge. I don't want us to, that's why your point of it's not, it's okay, isn't always the right thing.
You're right. And that's, I feel like in general, I want to try to tell them, just relax and trust your instincts.
Right.
And if you're in, the problem is anxiety is such a problem in the postpartum in general.
And it's in
more
our culture.
Every year I talk to more moms with postpartum anxiety than the year before. It's like, I feel like it's growing exponentially. And so
can I interrupt why I think part of that is, besides that we're under undue stress, whether we're conscious of it or not every morning when we wake up, it's because of so much information out there.
Right.
Am I doing it right?
Right.
I mean, it used to be just the lactation consultants might give different. Now it's all the different moms and boards across the boards.
Yep. Well, and so I feel like it's tough, because I want to say trust your intuition, but if your intuition is telling you that your baby's constantly not getting enough milk, and that people, it's confusing. It's confusing. And I do postpartum. I'm a postpartum peer counselor. And so I know a lot about anxiety, postpartum, perinatal mood and anxiety disorders. And it's very common. The whole not getting enough is very common. And the way that hospitals set it up so that you are counting poops and pees and you're writing down every time the baby eats.
Anxiety producing.
It is anxiety producing.
I know.
And I've had women be like, I can't remember if I fed on the left side or the right side last time. And it's like, it's okay. Try to remember. If you can't remember, it's okay. I feel like that's a large part, without crossing the border into telling someone it's okay when it's not. And I take that very seriously. And if someone says to me, it is like anything during labor. If someone says to me, I'm really not comfortable with bed sharing. So bed sharing is something I did. I'm comfortable with it. I've researched with it. I personally am comfortable with it. If my client says to me, I am not comfortable with bed sharing, I don't say, oh, don't be ridiculous.
Or try it.
Do it, give it a chance.
You'll get used to it.
Right. What I say is I would be happy to share information with you. Many women find that they start out uncomfortable and then it just sort of creeps in. It happens. Many women aren't comfortable, and that has to be up to you, because just as with the myriad of things in labor, they're making their decisions about their baby.
And that's what we want them to trust, is their decisions. So do you, because I would encourage them, sleep wherever you want your baby. I mean, have your baby sleep wherever you want. and if they're like, well, I have the nursery, so I think that, but it's kind of hard going down the hallway, or I worry about, do you suggest we'll bring the bassinet just next to your bed?
Yeah. And I would say, don't be afraid to change your mind on things and to try different things. Mm-hmm. And I just try to make everything normal. I say a lot of women start off saying they don't want a bed share, and then they find themselves falling asleep while nursing with the baby in bed.
And vice versa.
And vice versa. Many women want a bed share, and they feel like they can't sleep well enough with the baby in the bed. It's so common that someone will say, my baby will only sleep in the swing. What do I do? Mm-hmm. And I'm like, you let him sleep in the swing. I mean, and because everything is just, now this is more with first-time moms, and I feel like the gift of a multiple baby, when you're a first-time mom, you're like, what is wrong with this baby? They have to be held all the time. They have to be nursed all the time. They nurse every night from 7 p.m. until 1 a.m. They just nurse straight. What is wrong with this baby? Something's wrong. And with the second, third, fourth baby, you're like, oh, this is what babies do. Mm-hmm. With some variation in babies. But that's really, so, aside from nursing, I will, to get back to the
topics,
hopefully they've had a good education. I want to find out how they're feeling, how their vagina is feeling, how their labia is feeling, if they've had a C-section, how their scar is. Mm-hmm. I really have no ability to diagnose any of that information. No. It's more just to encourage them to look into it if,
they're just what their bleeding is like.
Right. And again,
I think that's an important thing to talk to them about.
I talk, and my main message to them there, because usually they know. I remember when I often tell this story that when I was with my first baby, the midwife said, any clot bigger than a lemon is worrisome. And I thought, holy crap, like I'm going to have clots the size of lemons, and that's okay. It just can't be bigger than a lemon. And sure enough, you have some pretty big clots, and that's normal. It's not up to me to say if that's, in my opinion, if they have a clot the size of a quarter, I would, but I often share that story and say, if you have anything you're worried about, you shouldn't be soaking a pad more than every hour,
right,
etc. But more with the bleeding, I emphasize the activity in bleeding.
Good.
And I emphasize that I share this, I know we've talked before about how much to share and how much not to share. With my first baby, I was very proud that I was walking around the block the next day, and I was very proud of being active and going to the grocery store, and I bled for 6 weeks. And with my second baby, I did a lying in, and I bled for a week and a half. And I definitely feel those are related.
Yeah.
I talk about avoiding stairs. I talk about minimizing activity. I talk about if there's a day you're bleeding more, your bleeding should be reducing every day after you have a baby. Right. And if there's a day you're bleeding more, it's because you did too much. I talk about, a midwife shared with me once that dark maroon blood tends to indicate a hormonal shift and is often accompanied by a lot of baby blues or tears. That red blood or brown blood is not, but that really maroon blood, you just might expect a more hormonal day. Just these like little pieces of, that's the kind of stuff I talk about related to bleeding.
And that if they have any worries or concerns, they can call you. But if it's really something they're worried about, that medically, that to remind them that you're not their primary care provider, that they need to call their...
I usually don't even say you can call me.
Yeah,
and I have, I had a client just call me the other week.
We want them to know that they can call us, though.
Yeah, I just had a client call me the other week and say, I'm having this really sharp pain in my side. And I was like, why are you calling me about this? It's...
Because they needed you to tell them to call
their care provider.
Right.
So we talk about breastfeeding. We talk about bleeding and recovery. We talk about, if they've had any stitches. We talk about, making sure that they're keeping, ice or cool, that their after pains are under control, that sort of stuff. We, this is going to sound dumb, but like the first thing always when you go in is coo over that baby. Hopefully everybody does that automatically.
Right.
But I check into how things are working with the partner. Sometimes, usually by day 4, there's not a lot of conflict yet, but sometimes there is some...
I like how you say yet.
Well,
yeah. Well, it's true.
Sometimes there's starting to be a little bit of like, well, my partner really wants to feed the baby, or my partner is, wants to help more, and there's really... So I just, again, talk about what's normal. I talk about...
And have you discussed this prenatally?
Yeah, of course, all of it. But people don't always...
But it's... Yeah. It's my pet peeve is you can't, it's so good to have everything discussed prenatally.
Yeah.
Because then when you do it does come up, you can bring it back to, remember we talked about how and you are offsetting some of this.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, and then I also often pass on, I think a lot of it is lowering expectations.
Yes. And that's a prenatal visit conversation.
And just reminding them, my husband has a joke during my postpartums that survival equals success. If everybody's alive at the end of the day, you don't have to be happy. You don't have to be clean. You have to be well fed and alive, both of you.
Right.
And, if you think that, I mean, so many first time moms, they say, oh, on my maternity leave, I'm going to start a business, or I'm going to paint the house, or I'm going to whatever.
Right. Or I'm having company. I'm having the party, or my family's going to come, and then they think they have to take care of their family.
Right. Yeah. So all of that stuff, I just sort of normalize and say, I make sure the partner hears me too.
Right.
It's really hard work to grow a baby
on the outside of your body.
On the outside of your body. And you're going to take this baby from 7 pounds to 10 pounds in a matter of months. Mm-hmm. And you're doing that all with your body, milk that you're making, and you're not getting a lot of sleep. And I just sort of always constantly normalize that and try to tell them they're doing a great job and they're a good mom. And
do you, and I'm sure, this is part of, it's interesting because everything about the postpartum visit is really prenatally as well. Mm-hmm. It's about all of these things that you're talking about the breastfeeding, getting them ready for that, and how it's a learning experience, and then checking in with it during that time. It's about the sleeping, where they're going to sleep and their expectations, and then checking in with them about that. And then their own sleep issues,
It's crazy to me how many people are surprised. I mean, how do people not know that babies don't sleep through the night?
Well, because here's why. This is the reason, and I've explained this to people. People say, how's your baby sleeping?
Yeah.
That's the question. So it implies to everyone they must sleep.
Yeah.
The answer is, what do you mean, how are they sleeping? So I say to people, just say to them, sleeping great. Don't go into the details, because all of a sudden it sounds like you have the rare baby who doesn't sleep. The truth is, nobody has a baby who sleeps. And I'll take that back. Breastfed babies tend to sleep less than formula-fed babies. That's not across the board either. So I prepare people for that too. Like, be careful, because you might hear about babies who sleep through the night starting right from the beginning. That may be that baby. That may not be the truth. It may be just somebody giving that answer just because they are appeasing everyone. It may be a formula-fed baby that they, their bellies are full longer.
I find it so interesting. I facilitate a mothering circle, and some moms will come in and say, oh yeah, my baby sleeps through the night. And what they mean is,
yeah, I know what they mean.
My baby wakes up every 2 hours to eat, but doesn't cry. They just wake up to eat and they go right back to sleep, and I'm able to doze through it. And a mom with the exact same situation will go, oh, my baby wakes up every 2 hours. It's awful. And the same thing is happening. And a lot of it has to do with the mom and whether she can sleep easily, whether she can do. If you're waking up, going to a nursery, sitting in a chair and rocking a baby fully awake every 2 hours, that is miserable. And if you're laying in bed with a baby who roots around every 2 hours and nurses and then falls off again and never cries the whole night.
Right.
Some women will say that's sleeping through the night.
Exactly.
And some women will say that's my baby waking up every 2 hours.
So then also a big prenatal conversation that I think then goes back into the postpartum is the company, who's coming.
Yeah, I would do that all prenatally.
Right. But you're then checking in with them postpartum. How's it going with people, and helping them negotiate that if need be. The lying in period. We really want to stress not being you, the first time mom out there doing all that stuff.
It's like a weird point of pride.
It is a pride. Of course. And there's part of you that wants to show, look, you can give birth. That whole, I want the woman who gives birth in the fields and then goes back to work. Well, let me say, she didn't really want to go back to work.
She was probably a slave.
She was being forced to go, or there was no choice in her life because that's what she had to do.
We have a mutual friend who threw a Super Bowl party when she had a 2-day-old baby, and at the time was very proud of that, and I think realized later that was crazy.
Yeah. But crazy because it's not. We live in the postpartum, I am the reminder
Yeah.
of this is a time that you will never have back again.
Yes.
And it is such an important period of time for not just the emotional component, which is over and above, so on its own is important. It's the physical as well, that you are producing milk, you are growing a baby on the outside, you are also in the process of healing, whether your womb is needing to shrink down, and whether it's been by a cesarean that you gave birth or vaginally, your body is changing. And this is so important, and that the partner's role, which has been discussed prenatally also. I am not a proponent, and people don't have to agree with this either, that the mom pumps so that the partner can bond with the baby to feed the baby. There's so many other ways to do that. To me, that just becomes more work for the woman who is already so vulnerable prenatally.
We could do a whole episode on how to help our clients, just ways for dad to, or partner rather, to bond.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So checking in with that and seeing how they're doing, and are they, getting good support around them. If they need that support, how can we help them find that support? Letting them know the resources in the community again for them, like the mothering circles that might exist, the going back to yoga when it's ready, with the mom and baby classes, getting outside for some fresh air.
After the lying in.
Yeah. And even some of the lying in can be laying outside, sitting outside on your deck, in your porch, on your backyard, just not doing anything, just nursing the baby. And then there's always the other factor. We're talking like first timers only. With the postpartum for the second, it's all those things, because we never want to take it for granted. They get it all. And the second time, third baby may have more issues with breastfeeding and such, but it's also, how are they handling the siblings? The siblings.
That's it. I that's exactly right.
Because that comes up more than anything, I think.
Yep. They're worried about the older sibling. And I just had this conversation with a client recently, and she says, I think my son has a medical problem because he started peeing his pants ever since we brought the new baby home. And this is actually a good friend of mine. And I said, doctor's going to laugh you out of the office if you bring a kid in and say, now I should not say that, because who knows, there may be a medical problem. But this same person, her son said, maybe I'll love you again one day, mommy. And she was devastated. She had this beautiful relationship with her older son for all these years. And I mean, I remember that. I know you remember that. Any of us with multiple children can really relate to that. And so I would say a lot of times with the second baby, you talk more about the first kid at the postpartum than the baby.
How are they doing, and how are they adjusting, and how are you adjusting? And, we've brought this up at the mothering circle, and actually at the birth circle that I do. People are so afraid about how they're going to not have enough love for this new baby, and because they're so attached to their first child. And then the first child suddenly becomes the monster child that of course, that they love deeply, dearly. Nothing changes, except they don't quite feel that at that moment, because the older child is demanding and whining and wanting things and being whatever they're being. And, if you've talked about that prenatally, it helps. But then you're checking in with how are you doing with this transition?
Yep. Yeah, I just to wrap up, I think I try to make them feel normal. Mm-hmm. Again, writing that line, I try to make them feel normal. I try to reduce the number of shoulds. There are already so many people in their life saying, you should be doing ab exercises. You should be having a clean house. You should have written thank you notes. You should be lying in. You should be lying in. You should be getting so much sleep. You should be breastfeeding. You should, you should be cloth diapering.
Right.
You should be this. You should be that. I just try to, almost anytime they ask me anything, I say, well, what do you think?
Right.
And how is that working for you?
Exactly.
And if it's making them absolutely miserable, or if it's working really great. I mean, and then I also try to just allow a lot of space for,
it's not black and white.
Depends a lot on the parents, but I try to allow a lot of space for not being in total bliss, for that strange feeling that so many of us relate to, where you're in total bliss, but you're also like, I'm leaking from every orifice in my body. I have hemorrhoids.
What the hell was I thinking?
I have, my boobs are leaking. My vagina's leaking. I have hemorrhoids the size of grapes. I'm like everything. I'm 20 pounds heavier than I used to be. My belly, I still look 5 months pregnant. Like, who am I and what is this? It's, and
I just remember, it's so true though. I love what you're saying. I just remember at the postpartum mothering circle, the new mama who walked in, who was probably 2-3 weeks postpartum, and she shouldn't have been out, but she walked in with her beautiful baby swaddled in her sling on her chest. And she sat down, and she was a first time mom, and she said, I just want to know when I'll have me back. And I think everyone in the room wanted to laugh and cry at the same moment, because she was so sincere in that statement. It was so real. It wasn't a joke. She was crying because she was like, and she of course loved her baby, but she was overwhelmed by what the hell happened here.
And there's a lot of people saying to moms at that stage, don't you just love every minute?
Yeah.
And a lot of times at 4 or 5 days postpartum, they still do. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times it hasn't all caught up with them. But a lot of times they're already starting to be like, wait a minute, this is a huge change of identity. Yeah. And so I just try to, if they are blissful and happy and loving every second and like, this is the best thing that's ever happened to me, and that is all there is to it, then that's where I am with them.
Right.
And if they are like, am I ever going to get my body back? Am I going to get my marriage back? Am I going to get, have the same relationship with my older kid? Then that's where I am with them.
And I also, though, and I think you do this as well, I will say, and I think you already brought this up, there's going to be ups and downs with this. Some days you're not going to feel this way. Other days you are going to feel this way. I think also, and this is a whole other topic on its own, but I think an important thing that we just need to touch base with is we do want to make sure with all of our clients that they are aware of. This would be prenatally, and then I think the partner needs to be kind of in charge of this, and anybody else who's there to support any really truly postpartum depression symptoms. Yeah. Because I've read, and again, certification things, and I listen to doulas talking, and they talk about how they go over these things with the mom before they leave about the signs and symptoms. And I think that's good. That's important. But if she's really in that depression, she's not going to be the person who's saying, I'm really in this place. Yes. They need the partner to be aware of those signs and symptoms.
And it's important to remember that if you're seeing her 3 or 4 days postpartum, and she's not seeing her care provider until a 6-week checkup.
That's why it's important to check in.
Yeah. Some women are going to have that postpartum depression anxiety hit with that first hormone drop at 4 days, but it's much more common for it to come in 2 weeks, 3 weeks.
And that's why some doulas feel like it's better to go at 2-3 weeks. But I also think you can do that via communication.
Yeah.
I think still... despite what I just said, I think that you need to be there initially if you can, and the latest is 2 weeks, I think, to check in with somebody. But we can talk about postpartum depression another time.
I think we should. All right.
Well, thanks, Sarah, for giving such great input. And I'm sure everybody who's listening has suggestions as well. And like Sarah always says at the end of these things, please put them out on the Facebook page and give us ideas.
To hear what you do when you do your visit and what you do there. And if you bring a gift, what it is. I mean, everything. What you talk about,
what does your postpartum visit look like? And when does it happen?
Yep. All right. Thanks. Everybody.
Bye
Have
now.
a great week.